So this is unfortunate recent news from just a couple hours ago. Shooter who killed 6 at Nashville Christian Elementary School identified as transgender former student. This is from notthebee.com. The shooter who opened fire earlier today at the Covenant School, a Presbyterian elementary school in Nashville, has been identified as a 28-year-old transgender former student. The shooter, whose name or picture we will not publish, killed 3 young children and 3 faculty members before being shot dead by law enforcement, who responded within minutes. Quote, at one point, the shooter was a student at that school, Metropolitan Nashville Police John Drake told reporters. The shooter identifies as transgender. Fox News reports that the shooter identified as a transgender woman, meaning he was a male who identified as female. However, incredibly, the biological sex of the killer is still not 100% clear. Fox also reports that the school principal was one of the victims. The victims have been identified, and I won't bother with the victim names just because this is still a breaking story. In fact, this has even been updated since I last read it. The shooter reportedly carefully planned the attack with detailed maps and surveillance and left some sort of manifesto. When asked about possible motive, the police chief said, there's right now a theory that we may be able to talk about later, but it's not confirmed. When asked specifically if the shooter's transgender identity could have factored into the killer's motive, he said, there is some theory to that. We're investigating all the leads. So, a lot to take in there, but Anastasia, we'll go to you for your initial reaction.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's heartbreaking. It's sad when anything like this happens. I think one of the last things I want to do is do what our current president often does, which is he takes sad tragedies that happen like this and uses it for a way for gun reform or things like that. So I think in my honest, from my Christian roots reaction, that's sad. Clearly the Bible is very against murder and is all very positive for life. So I think that's heartbreaking, especially with the ages of the children, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is absolutely devastating. And it's, I think, cruel and wrong for people to jump on the bandwagon of virtue signaling against gun ownership. And already have seen that a little bit in my personal circle, and it's disturbing. It's not something that I think should be highlighted. This, to me, speaks to huge volumes. It speaks to the oppression of the church and the students that were targeted. I believe it seems largely because of their institution and the impact of faith from that institution. I mean, this is drawing some implications that this transgender individual harbored a great deal of resentment towards their seemingly Christian upbringing, having been a previous student from the school. So that just is very disturbing to see that there's persecution in such a way. But moreover than that, because we see things like this happen not just in Christian schools, it happens in, bars, gay bars, banks, church assemblies, wherever. And what it speaks of a louder volume to me is the dire state of mental health in the United States, the horrifying impact that wealth and privilege has had on people's mental stability. And it even specifies, I don't remember if you read it in that article, but specified that the shooter's father, who he lived with, the house was estimated to be in excess of $800,000 home, in a nice area. Not that is indicative of motive or anything like that. It's completely irrelevant. If anything, what it says is this individual had experienced monetary and I would say material privilege to a great extreme and still was deeply troubled mentally.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, I think oftentimes, like you said, wealth can lead to, honestly, just a overindulgence in vices just leads to so many mental health issues. And that's honestly what a lot of this boils down to. the state of Tennessee in, I believe it was March 2nd, was when Bill Lee officially signed legislation that also banned a lot of the transgender transitional surgeries. And so that's one of the theories that I'm sure those officers were referring to floating around, is that this was done kind of in response to that. And I hope that's not the case, but I mean, it doesn't really matter what the motive was. Ultimately, this is still a horrible tragedy, and it's really unfortunate. And the story is still developing, so we won't necessarily give too much more comments on that. We had Shara in the chat said, just another reason why I homeschool. Susie Q said, never let a crisis go to waste, in response to what Anastasia said. And unfortunately, you're right. That is a communist motto, that's for sure.